This is the Crossfire Podcast, brought to you by Outlaw Legacy. This podcast is dedicated to the memory of our basset hound, Brady. We love very much and we miss dearly.
Interesting.
I bumped it on accident. There's like 50 buttons over here and I accidentally bumped one. It was the harp. No, not the harp. What is that called anyways?
I don't know.
I think a harp.
It's like fairy dust or something.
Fairy dust?
Yeah.
Is that what you think of?
That's what I would call fairy dust.
I'm going to call it fairy dust now. All right. Well, we are back. I think I say that every time. We're not back. We are here.
Yes.
We are here, present on the Crossfire Podcast. I am Craig, across from me again, and still, forever, my wife Amanda. And Dre is still here with us.
And will forever be your sister-in-law now.
True.
For as long as I am your wife, she will be your sister.
Does that go away?
No.
No.
What do you mean?
No, I mean, like, okay, I'm not saying that we would divorce, but if you divorce, does that go away? Is she no longer my sister-in-law?
I don't think so because
We're
I have aunts and uncles.
We're sisters-in-law.
We're sisters still.
Okay.
Yeah, we have family who is still, we still consider family.
Okay, yeah, but not legally.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right. All right. Well, today on this podcast, episode 4,
Yes.
We are covering Amanda's story.
Everybody wants to know Amanda's story.
Nobody does.
Everybody wants to
cares.
know. Yeah, no. Everybody wants to know what's behind those big, beautiful brown eyes
Okay.
and what happens when you start thinking.
When I start thinking.
Let's start with, what Enneagram are you? For people out there who follow the Enneagram process, what Enneagram are you?
I am an Enneagram 5. I'm a 5-wing 6 to be specific. But
That's where Craig and I disagree, but okay.
No, they disagree about the wings in general. They don't understand the wings. They think
we're not
the
talking
wing,
about us though.
Okay. Well, we're going to get into this in another episode, but they do not agree with the way the wing setup is set up. I am a 5-wing 6, and I am a quintessential 5 to the core.
What does that mean? What is a 5?
A 5 is an introvert, an independent thinking individual, someone who is ambitious and who strives to be the knower, the researcher, takes pride in the knowledge that they have. And I think that's me to a T.
Yes. Yes, big yes.
I research everything. I am a thinker. I like to be the most prepared person in the room. Does that always happen? No. Mentally prepared person in the room.
Not physically prepared.
No.
That's where I come in.
Yeah. So, and I'm an introvert to the core.
Well, I'm on the Enneagram Institute website, and the 5 is the investigator.
Yes.
It is the intense cerebral type, perceptive, innovative, secretive,
Very
and
secretive.
Isolated.
Yes. And secretive isn't like, oh, I have to keep all of these secrets. No, I'm just very personal and do not.
No, you're very private.
Private.
You're
yes.
very
private. Yeah.
You don't care to share your life to anybody else, which is weird because we're doing a podcast.
I don't care for like gossip and, small talk and, oh, did you hear this and that? Like, I like to keep to myself. And the tighter the circle, the better.
Yeah, you literally have, you have your friends, And you have a lot of acquaintances and a lot of friends, but I mean, you're not somebody to just go out and start a conversation with somebody.
Oh,
like,
no.
That's
No,
not your go-to.
That takes time and investment from me. And I feel that if I'm going to invest time in people, I want the same investment back from somebody. Like I expect that to be reciprocal.
So your basic fear is being useless, helpless,
Yes.
or incapable.
Incapable, number one, is my biggest fear in life, is to be incapable.
Your basic desire is to be capable and competent.
Yes. Truth to both.
And 5-wing-6 is the problem solver. And for our clients out there listening, you know that Amanda loves to solve problems. And she wants to better your life or your company to its potential, its maximum. And that's where we basically kind of get into the weeds sometimes with our clients, because we start working with them specifically in marketing, but we start working with them in other aspects of their business as well, just because we are problem solvers.
Yeah,
the core.
The goal is to solve the problem, and if that goes beyond marketing, then that goes beyond marketing. And I think to my personality, that might be it might be a bad thing sometimes, because I have found that with friendships and even within family, because I am a problem solver, that naturally my thought is to solve other people's problems. So when you come to me and you're not feeling cool about something or whatever, you're down in the dumps, I am a great listener, but I don't leave it at that. You know, I'm someone who actively, I listen and I'm like, okay, well, let's fix this. And sometimes people don't want that. They just want you to listen and not provide any feedback. So it's very difficult for me sometimes to know when is time to fix a problem and help solve a problem, versus just sitting back and letting them figure it out on their own.
Yes. Well, I do have some examples of what a 5-wing-6 would be. Actually, it doesn't say wing 6, but just a 5 in general. People out there in the world. Number 1 is Buddha. Number 2 is Einstein.
Oh.
Number 5 is Stephen Hawking.
Ugh.
Wow.
Trey. Okay.
And, I mean, there's a huge list of them, but Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jodie Foster.
I mean, I like to think I'm with good company.
Kurt Cobain.
Oh.
Wow.
See, I always felt a connection.
So, yeah, Amanda is definitely very unique. And sometimes for me, that's a challenge, too, because I am a 2.
You're a 2.
And that is a different personality, and sometimes we have a challenge with that. And so we actually have a framed piece of paper. It's actually up behind me.
We'll post it. We'll take a picture and post it. Yeah, it's how a 2 is in a relationship with a 5, and it gives you like your strengths and your weaknesses, or not necessarily strengths and weaknesses, but like things to be cautious of.
I think it specifically says harmony and challenges.
Okay.
Yes. You know what I love about that, though, is it's not even actually in the frame. It's just taped onto a frame.
Onto the frame.
And it's been there for probably a year now.
Yeah, I think a little bit longer than that. So Craig is a 2-wing.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think Craig is a 2-wing-3. They're going to fight me on this, but he is a 2 at his core.
I'm not going to fight you on that.
Okay.
I just think that I have equal amounts of 3, 6, and 9. However that song goes. 3, 6.
And Dre, you're a 9, right?
I am a hard 9, yes.
So we're going to have to do an Enneagram episode, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And then I also want to invite our potential guests that do come on to take the Enneagram test, because I really want to know more, not only about them and what they do, but more about them and how they do it, and how they internally work and justify their decisions and create. That's interesting to me.
Yeah,
because I want to figure it out.
And I think having taken the Enneagram, it's been the probably the biggest eye-opening experience that we've had in our relationships with other people and with each other. Because we start to see who they really are. And like Craig said, how and why they, make their decisions, and who they are when they're healthy and when they are unhealthy. And what it is that like lights their fire, right? And I think everyone kind of has, they have different things, everyone is a little bit different, but when you start to look at the way that their personality makeup is, it is fairly similar for a lot of people. So it's helped us with clients. It's helped us in our relationship. We've had our parents take it, and that has been interesting. Although they just took it and they were like, this is my number, but they never like followed through and read like,
Why?
oh, okay. If I now I understand why Craig does this, or, I understand why Dre does that. So yeah, I think when you really take the time to read it, it's eye-opening, definitely.
Well, especially in the people that you're closest to, or you have the closest working relationship to, it's helpful to understand those people by knowing how they think. And so there's times where I'm like reading about a type 1, which is my dad, and I understand, oh, that's why he does that. Okay, that makes sense. So there's positives and negatives to each type, and there's challenges that come with that because not everybody is cohesive. Not everybody is harmonious. I mean, you can't work together all the time and not run into problems, and you kind of understand about how or why they act the way they do. But I just looked up, if you are interested in taking that test, it's the Enneagram Institute. Enneagram, enneagram-institute.com. And we'll put that up on our video. And in case you didn't know, we are more than just a podcast. We are actually videoing this podcast. So you can actually see this as we record it.
Yeah.
We are basically at our dining room table.
Not basically, we are.
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
It isn't very glamorous right now, but hey.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to fix up our office and house, and we have flooring everywhere. We've finished the flooring in the main room, so you'll see that. But yeah, so you could take this test, Enneagram Institute, and you can find out more. I encourage you to share it with your friends and family because you really could learn a lot.
This sounds like a sponsor.
It does, but it's not sponsored.
I wish it was.
Actually,
Well,
It would be cool to take more like Enneagram type training.
Yeah.
Ooh. So we could become therapists.
Well, I mean, I'm almost there.
I wouldn't take it to that level.
And that's the T. Yeah, so I think it's really smart, but we've done it with our friends, and we've learned a lot about just them as well. So, but this episode is not about the Enneagram Institute. It's about Amanda. Inez, as her family calls her.
Yes.
Inez.
So Amanda Inez, Inez is her middle name, and that is her name around her family completely. I mean, everybody calls her that, except for maybe a couple. They call you Mandy.
Yeah, they call me Mandy.
So your family we talked about this in the other episodes, but they're primarily Spanish speaking, especially the older generations. The younger, cousins and stuff, obviously,
so much.
primary
Not so
is
much.
English.
Yeah.
But they do speak
Spanglish.
Spanish too.
Yes.
Spanglish, yeah. But yeah, let's talk about the beginning. So we talked about Dre saving the marriage of your parents. Air
Trying.
quotes.
Yeah,
Air
we're
quotes.
Trying.
Amanda started the marriage.
I started the marriage. Yeah, I am the oldest of 3. And I think my mom was 19 when she had me. So, yeah, they were pretty young. And right after she had me, her mom died. And so she moved into my paternal grandparents' house. So I was raised there with a very, very, very large family. I mean, my dad has 9 siblings. There were people and kids around all the time. And I lived that single child life for a while, and I loved it until my cousin Stevie came along. So my aunt also lived at my grandparents' house, and I think we moved out when Stevie was born, or it was about the same time, but Stevie was born, and he is the closest to me in age from my other cousins. And he immediately kind of like filled that little brother role, and that's where I learned about siblings. It was difficult for me.
How tough they can be.
And how tough they could be, yeah. Yeah, but so living with my grandparents, Spanish was my first language, and like I said earlier in a previous episode, I don't remember when I started speaking English, but when I did, I almost completely stopped speaking Spanish. And I think a lot of people do that when they start going to school and stuff like that, because you speak it at school, you speak it with your friends, you come home and you start to speak it. And so, I lost quite a bit of Spanish, and I think it always gets better when I am fully immersed in it. So anytime I go to Mexico, or I start watching like Spanish only television, or reading, it really helps a lot. But yeah, it's a little tidbit on the early years.
Yeah. Well, what was it like living in a Hispanic household in the U.S.?
So I think my family was different from a lot of other families that we knew, who we would call like hardcore, but I guess they're more like traditional Mexican families. My mom was born in the U.S. My dad wasn't, but both of them were really into pop culture. And so they were really into like American music, and they watched both Spanish and English TV. Although when it was like in the evenings and stuff, it was mostly like Spanish news. They watched telenovelas, of course, but it was a mix of the two. And I always felt that we were like in this odd world where we were between two cultures, is what I felt like growing up. And so it was like super Mexican traditional. We were really into, like, for example, folklorico and mariachi music. We knew a lot about that. We used to watch like old golden era Mexican movies. And
what is folkloric? See, it's hard for me to say.
Folklorico, Mexican folk dance. So we grew up dancing, and both of my parents danced in high school, and I think a little bit after high school. And we had like some charros in the family. So like, I guess overall it was very like culturally rich and diverse in the activities that we were involved in. And, going to, you'd go to school and people would be like, "Oh, what did you do on the weekends?" I had,
and
dance
really,
practice.
that makes you seem more hardcore than they are.
Yeah, it makes you seem like super hardcore Mexican because you're involved in all of these like types of like cultural things, activities. So yeah, it was weird. It was a weird balance. What did you say? Like,
it was weird because nobody related. There was nobody like us, at least in our schools, that did the same thing.
And so within the activities that we did, we were like the white kids, but like everyone else outside of those activities saw us as like the super Mexican kids. So we never, like, it was a really weird like
mix,
stuck between two universes, really, is what it felt like.
Yeah, because you are light complected.
Mm-hmm.
You had lighter or reddish tint hair when you were younger, and you were kind of treated differently, I would say. Would you agree with me?
Yeah. My cousins called me the redheaded stepchild.
But you do have red-haired people in your family.
Yeah, I do, on both sides. Both of my grandparents have red hair, or like I don't know, like strawberry blondish hues. And I have an uncle, my dad's brother, he was kind of like had orange hair when he was younger. It's
you
not
said
orange
hues.
Anymore. Hues.
Yeah, you're such a nerd.
So yeah, and there's a lot of like complected family members on both sides of my family. My dad's dad, his ancestry was Spanish, and they were very light complected, had colored eyes. And then on my mom's side, I'm sure there was some Spanish lineage there, but both of my grandparents were fairly light complected. So, it runs in both sides. But what you put me next to my dad, we don't look alike at all.
Yeah.
Complete opposites. So, yeah, it was not difficult for me, but I definitely was the odd ball out in my family, and also within like dance and like writing and stuff like that, because I visibly stood out from everybody else, which didn't make it easier for me in how they treated me.
Especially that you were quiet and introverted.
Yeah. And then I was like super, super duper shy. I mean, I'm shy now, but as a kid,
it was way worse.
It was really bad. And I had really, really bad social anxiety. And so kids, I was so afraid of kids. Well, and also I grew up with a bunch of adults. So I was more comfortable with adults than I was with kids. And so when I went to school, it was really hard for me to make friends, and I was really shy and quiet. And sometimes that came off as like me being conceited.
Standoffish almost.
Yeah, standoffish. And it wasn't that way at all. And then I would go to, you know, dance practice or other places, and I was the oddball out there, the odd person out, just by the way that I looked, and people didn't know that I spoke Spanish, so they would talk about me in front of me, and then I would feel really bad, and it was hard. But
now you just call them out.
Yeah, well, I got to the point probably when I was in high school where I just like started calling people out and saying things, but it took it would have to make me feel really bad or really mad to say something, because, you know, as someone who's very shy, it takes a lot out of you, like mentally and physically, to be able to say something. You think about it for days and days before you get the courage to do it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about your shyness is that you are shy when it comes to social events or, you know, just generally talking to people. Mm-hmm. But when you are talking about your knowledge base, your craft, your bread and butter, so to speak, you are probably the most confident person I know.
Oh, yeah. Anything that has to do with what I know, I am super duper confident. I really feel that I'm an expert in my craft, and I mean, I'm a researcher to my core. So when I open my mouth to speak, I want to know that I am speaking accurately.
What was also weird too is when it came to dance and rodeo, you were a completely different person when it came to actually like being on stage and being in an arena. Like, you were loud, like you were proud to be there. You were a completely different person, really. And it would shock everybody.
Yeah,
nobody expected it.
My stage presence was way different. It definitely, and that's why I loved it, because it allowed me to almost like wearing this cape, you know, where it like disguised who I really was. I was somebody else, yeah. And I think that's where I was the most free. And I remember, this is so stupid, but I remember when Beyonce came out with her Sasha Fierce album, and people were like, what is that? You know, who's Sasha Fierce? And she was like, it's my alter ego. And I was like, oh my God, I can totally relate to that. Like, I didn't have a name for mine, but you know, it just, when you go on stage or you go into the arena, you become somebody else. It's bigger than you. So I think
throw your face off and just, like,
yeah,
come up with a new face.
Yeah, it was
and
it was
being the only
outlet.
girl on like that rodeoed with our team. Mm-hmm. Everybody just expected a lot out of her, and she totally brought it and gave it to them.
Yeah, I feel like I had to work twice as hard as them just to be respected, and then it was pretty cool. And then I think also traditionally in the Mexican culture, women aren't as respected as male. There's a lot of machismo, and you know, in our family it's a little bit different, although we kind of like had to push back a little bit when you start to encounter other people who are really like that. It was difficult, but yeah.
Well, you got started in, what was like your first sport? You were doing soccer.
Right? So my whole family actually played soccer, and my dad and my uncles were in a men's league, and my dad played. He was like All Valley. I think maybe All-American or something like that when he was in high school. And he actually was recruited to play at UC Santa Barbara. Were just starting their men's program there. And at the time, my grandpa told him, oh, no, you don't know enough English, or it isn't worth you going to school. It's not for people like you. So he gave it up. Which I remember when he told me that story, I was like, oh my gosh, do you know what you missed out on? But I mean, now I'm here, so yeah. It worked
True.
So I think he always had a dream of having like this soccer star daughter, and I unfortunately did not live up to that.
I don't think any of us did. He
no.
expected it out of all of us.
Yeah,
and he tried really hard.
He tried really hard, and you know, I tried a lot, but I was good. I wasn't outstanding. I got by. So I did that from, I don't know, 5 all the way through high school, and then I started dance. Actually, no, I started really getting into horses and stuff when I was 7 or 8, somewhere in there. And quickly became my life. And that's all I ever wanted to do with my free time. And I started like shoveling stalls out and cleaning stalls and doing all the hard work before they would let me get on a horse. And then there was one day my mom was taking my sister B to dance practice. And they didn't have anyone to watch me at the lienzo with the horses, so I had to go to practice as well, and I was pissed. And I thought, oh, come on, I'm old enough. You can just drop me off. It'll be fine. And she said, no, you can't go by yourself. So she dragged me to dance practice. I was angry, and I was just sitting there. And when we got home that night, my dad said, okay, we're going to have to teach you the songs that they're learning in dance class. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, your mom signed you up and you have a show. I had like a show in 10 days or something after that. So he and my mom would practice with me in the backyard trying to teach me this dance because they signed me up and I had my first show. And it was a huge show in 10 days. So I was like, okay, I'll do it this one time, but I hated it. I was so angry with them because it involved dresses and earrings and I didn't want any part of that. And after I went on and did my first show, which was at the Fox Theater in Visalia, I became obsessed, and it went on from there.
What's funny too is B was involved first.
Oh yeah, and
the
she
outcome-
loved it.
Yeah, and she loved it, but she didn't stick around for too long.
No, and I feel bad for her because I think she had found her outlet, and then I started, and I think I was a natural at it, and it just everyone kind of got excited about it, and I feel bad that I kind of stole her thunder
Yeah,
there.
Definitely did.
It happens. It happens. I don't know if she had the same passion that you did for it, though. Do you think she did at that time?
I'm not really sure. I think she enjoyed it. She was little and her friends were there, and I think it was like a good social thing. B is much more social than the both of us, and I think that's what it was for her, was a social outlet that she really liked. Well,
okay, so talk about the lienzo, which is what, the rodeo grounds, right?
So a lienzo is an arena. It's an arena where they have charreadas, and we had kind of like a family lienzo in Wood Lake, and at first it was very it wasn't anything formal. It was just for the family to go and to spend our time, and everybody had horses, and some people like knew some of the suertes, so they would practice, but it was really informal, and I loved it. It was fun. We would spend every Sunday there, sometimes Saturday and Sunday. But we knew we would get up early on Sundays. We'd go and get like breakfast burritos or tacos, and we'd stop at the gas station and
get snacks to last us all day.
Yeah, ice for the ice chests and drinks and stuff like that. And then we were out there all day, and we'd come home after sunset.
Yeah.
And get ready for school for the week. But that's where we spent a lot of our time, whether we were riding horses or not. We were just, listening to music, running around. We had barn cats that Dre would chase around. So.
We had a goat at one point.
Oh yeah, we had a goat at one point.
That was served to us.
Yeah, we ate him eventually.
Yeah. What's funny is Dre loved animals. Still to this day loves animals. Animals do not love Dre.
No, they do not all animals. Some do.
Okay, some do, but I would say
cats do not.
Yeah.
No, cats don't. So eventually over time, the whole thing kind of started getting a little bit more formal, where we started putting together like a family team, and then we started competing and bringing in big tournaments and stuff like that. So it grew, and it was
big by the end of it.
It was cool. Yeah. And it only lasted probably through the 4 years that I was in high school, where we were really, really involved. I think by default, because I was the only girl and the only girl who was like interested and around, I became the reina, or the princess, I guess, of the team.
Queen.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. I got to, represent the team and stuff. And we did parades and all of the other things. But it really was a job and a chore. Where, we had our commitment with our horses and we had to go and take care of them. And then on Sundays, we had chores around the place where we were fixing up the lienzo and, cleaning up. And at events, we had to work. So there was a role for all of us. What'd you say?
Yeah.
Like, Dre's job was to make sure that the ice chest was always full of water and drinks and stuff.
I had to sit in the beer booth every Sunday during charreadas. Yeah. And I was in there with, I can't remember. I think I was in there with Furman, and he was a bartender, and I'd have to make sure that everything was full of ice the whole entire day.
Yeah, so we all had
how
jobs.
old were you?
I was tiny.
5?
I was like, no, maybe.
Yeah, maybe like 5.
Actually.
So about that time you started drinking? Just kidding. This is a joke, everybody.
And she had tabs on everybody. So if you needed to know where someone was at or what they were doing, she was the person to.
She's the little birds.
Yeah,
from,
we all had rodeos, or we had like walkie-talkies. So yeah.
Yep. Dre is the little bird, definitely.
Well, let me give a kind of a Wikipedia roundabout description of what this is, because there's a lot of people that have no idea what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. It is charreada, right? Mm-hmm. It is a competitive event similar to rodeo and was developed from animal husbandry practices used on the haciendas of Old Mexico. So this is the national sport
of Mexico.
Mm-hmm. It's a big deal in Mexico.
Huge.
There are basically these humongous. I mean, it's essentially the NFR and pro rodeo combined into one. Mm-hmm. And they have tournaments or events, which they would call charreadas, right?
Yeah, so
all over the states of Mexico.
There's like your qualifiers, right? Like in like PRC area rodeo and stuff like that. There are your qualifiers, and then there's the big one at the end, and that's the Congreso Nacional, and that's always in Mexico. But the U.S. has a small version of that, and so we have the regional, the regionals, and then the estatal, which is state. And from there, the top teams get to go on and compete in Mexico. And it is very rare that an American team goes and does very well, just because they're the best of the best. And so, and it's also really expensive to go and do that. Sorry, I'm being attacked by a basset hound over here.
So the events, I'm not going to say them in Spanish, but they are reining, heeling, steer tailing, bull riding, team roping, bareback on a wild mare, four-footing, which is a charro on foot. A charro is a charro.
Charro.
American charro is a cowboy, basically, right?
Yes.
And this charro has 3 opportunities in 8 minutes to rope a horse by its front legs and cause it to fall and roll once. It's usually a mare. And then there is the pass of death, el paso de la muerte.
That's my favorite.
Mm-hmm. That is...
A charro riding bareback with reins attempts to leap from his own horse to the bareback of a loose, unbroken horse without reins and ride it until it stops bucking. The most dangerous part of this is if the charro performing the pass falls under the 3 other mounted charros and are chasing the loose horse around the arena ring. Mm-hmm. This is done backwards at times for show.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
For the jefes de jefes.
I think sometimes they used to get extra points for doing that, but I don't know if that's accurate anymore. You reading the names in English was weird because
I've never heard them in English.
And so here's another thing is we have been around horses our entire lives almost, and the terms for that we know about that were all in Spanish. So then we go to school or we meet friends, who are English speakers, and they start, throwing these terms out in English, and we're like, what?
It's like a whole nother world.
Yeah, so it feels like you have to relearn it. Yeah, and it's interesting. It's the same thing, and
So like all the tack names and everything else, the saddles and all that, everything.
Still now, I don't even know most tack names, but I know them
English?
in Spanish.
Same.
So yeah, it was interesting. I have been to an event, and it's definitely more
different.
It's different. It's definitely more rugged and raw, I would say, than a rodeo event. Rodeo event is very organized.
Yes.
In the sense of the games or the events.
Well, I think charreadas are too, but I think for the person who understands them.
Yeah, but I'm saying these are more like raw events, meaning that this is the stuff you would do like with a wild animal.
Oh yeah, understandably. So
I mean, some of these, like I said, these are in English, but if I were to read the description of some of these are crazy.
Yes, they are. So there are 9 events in a charreada, and
then the escaramuza,
and then plus the escaramuza, and you don't always have the escaramuza. It depends on locally, especially in the U.S. Locally, if there's a team that's around, then they will have one.
Most of the time, there isn't.
Most of the
They're
time,
not popular. I don't feel like anymore.
No, not anymore. For a little bit there, they were kind of gaining steam. And locally, there were a lot of teams, but it was really, really, really hard to find girls to make a team, especially close enough to you. I mean, there were some where you could drive 2 hours or whatever to be on a team, but when we're doing other things, like I was also dancing competitively at the time, it was really difficult. But yeah, that's where we spent a lot of our time growing up, especially with my dad and my uncles and my cousins. A lot of my childhood memories revolve around the lienzo.
And this is a male-dominated sport.
Oh yes. Uh-huh.
Like when we talk about you being involved with it, that's very rare.
It's limited
because of the fact that you're a female, and it's probably changing more in the United States than it is probably in Mexico.
Not necessarily. No. I think every now and then you find like a girl who is, pretty rough and a tomboy and is like, if she's really involved, it's because she has a family member or a dad or a brother or someone who's like letting her be involved. In my case, my dad at first was like not really into it. But
it's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
There's a lot of events that are very dangerous.
Yeah, and also men are really crude, and I think he wanted to keep me away from that.
And also having to do all of that on a side saddle, because all women have to ride side saddle, would be difficult, I think.
Yeah, well, and that was a different aspect of it. That was like the riding part, but like the working and like at the event. So we had a regional event, I think it is what it was, and we hosted it. And my job was working the chutes in the back, and I was a 16-year-old girl surrounded by men, and I think my dad was kind of uncomfortable by that. But it's dirty, you're back there, you're doing hard work. It's, it is a male-dominated area.
There isn't any like barrel racing or anything like that.
No barrel racing. No. And so the only female portion of a charreada is the escaramuza, when the escaramuzas come in. And they do ride side saddle, and you'll see pictures of them. They've got like the big, nice, huge dresses, and they've got the sombreros on. And even that part of a charreada is super dangerous. And I don't think that they get enough credit for the work that they do.
That's very similar to the what is the like the Rockettes are here locally.
Trick riding.
It's like trick riding.
Yeah,
similar.
It's very like it's like what is the term? The swimming, the synchronized swimming.
Yeah.
It's very like there's like what,
everybody's
9
in
horses,
sync.
9 women on a horse.
Mm-hmm.
There's 9 women. Yes.
Not on a horse, but
no,
9 women.
But there's
on
9
horses.
women on a team. Yes.
And they're doing like patterns and doing their routes and stuff, and they cross. I mean, it's very similar to trick riding.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was added in 1992. It looks like. So it's not very old, or it's not a tradition.
No, I mean it is a tradition, but I think as far as like competitively, it is still rather new. And the cool thing about rodeo and charreadas are that they are both full of like extremely patriotic. If you go to a rodeo, you sense the patriotism, and it's the same thing at a
American rodeo,
charreada. Yeah. And they're both really full of culture and of history. And I think coming from a family, especially my dad was really, really, really into history and teaching us, like, this is not just about what your culture is, but, the history that goes along with it. And
it's just being proud of who you are.
exactly. And where you come from. Yeah. So the town or the ranch where my dad grew up, they have the lienzo is literally in the middle of town. They have super small, like, cobblestone streets. It is a very, very small, poor town. But the lienzo is right in the middle. So that was the place for events and socializing and stuff. So yeah, it's something that is very deep seated in my family.
So tell us about growing away from that and going off to school.
Well, so I kind of stopped writing while I was a senior in high school. About the time that I was graduating and I was going off to school, I kind of had to make a choice of what the next step was, right? And in doing that, you have to be realistic. Like, okay, I'm going to go off to school. I probably can't take my horse with me. I can't afford to take a horse with me. I can't afford to even take care of a horse.
Although you probably could have joined a team down there.
Yeah, I probably could have. And actually,
LA.
I was looking at that, but at the same time, I felt like I needed to go and figure out school in the long run, because it's really easy to get distracted with stuff like this. And I knew a lot of people who had joined and they were dropping out of school, or it was taking them twice as long. And it was like, okay, what really is my end goal here? And I decided this is going to go on the back burner. But I had also kind of made the decision that I wanted to dance more, because I felt like dance was more accessible and wasn't going to take as much time, and I could do that on campus. So
you don't need a horse trailer,
right,
or to feed your animal.
It
things
was
like that.
Much more budget friendly. So around the same time, I had graduated from high school, and that summer my grandma had died, and my dad's mom. And things were like really stressful. It like kind of happened suddenly, and they were trying to figure out, what they were going to do with her. I think they like sent her body to Mexico, and they had a big funeral for her there. But that was about the same time that I was having to move down to school. So I didn't get to go. So like literally everybody in my family except for me, Dre, and a couple cousins didn't go. And my mom like helped take us all. We all took them to the airport. We had like carloads of people. So at the time I decided that it was probably best to sell my horse. So we sold my horse, and it was so hard. I looked back.
It was the same day too. I couldn't imagine how difficult.
Oh, it was the same day as her
funeral.
Yeah, because we did like a small funeral for her here, and then they moved her. And the same day the funeral was the day that we sold the horse. Or I sold the horse, and
just rip the Band-Aid off. Huh?
Yeah, because it all happened. It's not like it was planned that way. Like we were looking. We had, put it up for sale, and someone just came along that day, and it had to be that day. I don't know. Like, I can't remember what the details were, but it just happened to be that day, and it was hard. And I remember my dad was like, "Do you want me to go with you?" And I'm like, "No, it's fine. It's fine." And then my cousins like scolded him, and they were like, "You shouldn't have let her go by herself."
Yeah.
It was so emotional, but hey, people who have had their first horse, you know what that is like. But yeah, so I eventually went off to school and pivoted, and I really haven't ridden since. My mom still rides, and she is on me all the time about going and riding.
She is. She's on me about being on you.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things, right, where
She hasn't invited me.
I think they saw how happy it made me feel, and it
was a good outlet for you.
It was,
and I think it would continue to be now, especially with work and how busy you are.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think they saw how good I was too, and it's when you see someone, who is really good at something, and then you see that they stop doing it, and you're like, wow, that's almost like wasted talent. And I feel like my parents felt that about it for a long time, because they really were like, hey, you should think about it again. You should think about it again. And there was one point where I was also burnt out on it, because it became a job, and I needed some time off.
You only do that basically.
Yeah.
And then that's when you kind of got into, you started getting into the dancing, and that became kind of your primary
Well,
thing too.
no, I felt like it was a big thing for a long time, but it was more about you when you went off to school, because growing up, our parents had a dance team. And we performed a lot, but it was like a family thing with friends. And
Yeah. So that's the other thing. So during this, and we did both things simultaneously. So while we had this whole horse side and we had like the family chowder team or whatever, we also had a like family dance group. And we started that when I was like in the 6th grade. And the way that it happened was I was dancing in another like local group, and I wasn't learning
a rival
anymore.
game across town.
No, I learned so much from that group, and a rival gang. I learned a lot there, but it got to the point where there were a lot of little kids, and I wasn't learning as much as I needed to learn to continue, and I was getting bored. And so my parents started taking me to like basically personal lessons, and anytime there was like a festival, we would go, and they would take me, and I would learn stuff. And then it got to the point where there wasn't anything super local where I could dance. So we built it. And we started with 4 girls, and it was my best friend and my cousin and a sister of one of the kids that used to go to the lienzo. So it was just the 4 of us. And then it was like 2 of the kids from the lienzo, my cousin, and then another friend from school. So we were all the same kids in the same, like our families were doing the same things. So we started dance, and I was teaching along with my mom. And then it got to the point where I knew more than my mom, and I was like 13. So I was teaching these kids, and then we started bringing in high school kids, because the high school kids had like already maxed out what they were learning there, and they wanted more. So they came and they joined our group. So we started like doing festivals, and we were traveling all over the valley dancing. It was pretty cool. Like we had a really good team. And
how old were you at this point?
13.
13.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like going into high school, starting high school kind of time.
Yeah. And I prided myself in being a technical dance group where if you know folklorico, or you're in the world, especially in the smaller towns and smaller groups, there's a lot of fluff. There's very simple footwork. It's all about, the presentation and the dress. And I wanted to be more than that. I wanted to like really have good solid footwork that was impressive and that was difficult and challenging for everybody, along with like more traditional style dress. And I really put a lot of thought and effort into this. And I was like researching the history of the costume and the traditions and why they dress.
My mom would buy her the VHS tapes on every state in Mexico to make sure she had it down to the T.
Yeah.
And it would come with like a whole costume layout, and
it would explain like why they wore those costumes. So why, in Jalisco they wore the dresses with the ribbons, and why it was different dress in Veracruz. And then my mom was also she was dancing at Fresno City College, and I would go with her to every class because they were night classes, and I would sit there. So there was a lecture period, and then there was the dance period, and I would sit through the entire lecture because it was all history, and I'd sit there, take my notes, and then I would sit through the dance portion, and I would learn the dances in the back, like in the back of the class, and then I would turn around and like go to our little dance groups and like teach them. So that was really what I wanted to do for a long time, and it's really like a micro niche, especially here in the US. And it's really hard to make a career out of it, or to even like be serious about it, like growing up into an adult or going to college or whatever. So eventually that kind of phased out. But when I got to high school, I danced. I went to UCR and I danced at UCR. And then I went off to school in Oklahoma, and I mean, there are like 0 Mexicans, so that's kind of where it ended. But when I went off to Texas Tech, I found out that there was a mariachi at Texas Tech, and they also had a dance group. And my regret is not looking into that a little bit more. But there was a group in town, and that's where Dre danced
when she lived with us.
It was like younger kids. It wasn't adults.
I feel like they were the most well-known and experienced group in town, though, which was really nice.
Yeah. So, dance is that I would really like to get back into dance because I feel like I've got a whole like other level of untapped potential in that realm. And there is a group out of Los Angeles. I forgot what their name is.
In LA?
In LA. But they...
Okay, Mom.
She is everything that I wish I could have built in that realm.
Oh, yeah.
She's freaking really rock star. And she has an online like course.
Yeah.
And I signed up for it. So I'm trying to get back into that. And Dre is too. So that's...
Yeah, I signed up for it, did it for 1 whole month. And I was like, I'm going to get back into it. I'm going to get into shape. And
Is it that one?
yes.
yeah, Ballet
Yeah.
Folklórico de LA.
I don't know how you could have forgot that.
Yeah.
So
but-
they like did all the press and stuff around Coco, and they dance at Disneyland, and you know they're like the premier folklorico company.
Didn't they have influence on the movie Coco?
I don't know if they had influence, but I definitely know that they like worked around with press and stuff like that. So
But what impresses you so much is they're so technical
yes,
and they're they're clean on their routines and stuff.
I can appreciate good footwork, and
that's-
just by seeing their posts, I know that that's how she pushes. And her husband has the mariachi side, so it's a dance company and the mariachi. I mean, freaking cool. So cool.
Sorry, I couldn't help you with that.
It's all right.
But yeah, it's one of those things. Like, I mean, obviously, there's a trend here with Amanda to where she is. No, I wouldn't say an addictive personality, but she has a personality that gets very in tune with details and technical. So whatever she's doing, whatever she's providing, whatever service she's doing, or whatever sport she's doing, she is technical and detailed, and she's kind of a perfectionist. And she kind of cleans it up to where it's at a very high level.
Yeah, and I guess looking back at soccer, I was joking about how I wasn't my dad's like soccer star or whatever, but
you really were.
okay,
Well, how
I don't know.
jealous third
Yeah,
sibling.
jealous.
I knew that I wasn't an overall good player, but there were areas where I could learn to do something really well. So like PKs and indirect shots and stuff like that, I was pretty solid because I practiced those little details, and I became that go-to person.
You were the detail
She
person.
was really the favorite.
Okay.
Okay,
I think we moved on from
now we're
that,
just
but-
throwing out accusations.
No, but you were the favorite
Were?
because I think you bonded. Yeah, were until I arrived. No, but I think you got to bond with Pop in a lot of different ways that B and I didn't. Because you rodeoed together, you spent a lot of time with him. So you were definitely the favorite, even though you didn't realize it.
I will put up a video, or not a video, a meme, a meme for old people, a meme that Dre sent the group family chat of basically a heat signature of somebody, like a thermal picture of somebody.
Yeah.
So if you're on the video, you'll see it. But it's basically somebody like holding their back with pain, like one of the back pain pictures. And it's Dre saying, "This is me holding all the good luck, carrying the good looks and the
Humor
of
the family.
And then
I got a muscle spasm, a back spasm.
2 days later,
basically Karma came back and bit her so hard.
It
she
was
had
the
to go
worst back spasm I've ever had, and I had
From
to
carrying
get
the family.
steroid shots from it.
she thought she was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
She was in
called
so
me
much pain. It was so much pain that she asked Amanda to follow her to the doctor's office.
Because I shouldn't have been driving. One whole side of my body was just like not working.
Yeah. So that's what you get. That's karma.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what was it like to go off to school and be away from your dad and the rest of the girls and stuff? I mean, we need to talk about when they came to visit you.
No, tell us what it was like living with Mom, because for a long period, Mom was gone. And yeah, she would come and visit and so, but you were living with her for the first time again in a really long time.
Yeah, so it was weird. It was a weird adjustment because I was leaving home, and it was bittersweet because it's like, woo, newfound freedom, because Pop was like super strict, but also like, whoa, this is weird. And I was living with my mom I hadn't lived with my mom for years. And so I hadn't really been around her in years. So that was kind of an adjustment period. I think both of us adjusting to each other. And it was fun and it was cool. But at the same time, it just didn't feel right. Like I was still worrying about, is Dre doing her homework? Is she hiding her homework? Like, you know, is Beezus like, is she doing her laundry? I was thinking about those things. So
because you were the mother at home.
Yeah, because those were my response. And I was still getting the phone calls. Can I go here? Can I go there? Can I spend the night at blah, blah, blah's house?
Your dad was having them ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that he was overwhelmed. So I was going home almost every weekend. And at first it was like, okay, you know, there were events, family events happening. So I was going home and then I was still continuing to go home. And at one point it was like, hello, maybe this is a sign that I shouldn't be here. So after I knew probably the second quarter, because they're on a quarter system, it just didn't feel right. So then I moved back home and it kind of just was like a spur of the moment thing. My dad was not excited about it, but
Nope, slept on a couch for like half a year.
the girls weren't excited about it because they finally had their own room. So I slept on the couch for about half a year until it was like, I'm not going anywhere. I've enrolled at COS. I'm going to be here at least a year.
This is not a JK moment.
Yeah.
So then it was back into the rhythm of kind of what we had before, which was probably a little bit different for them because they had freedom.
Yeah. Because you were home, but like it just felt different.
Yeah. Now they didn't have someone like breathing down their neck. Like, are you going to do your homework?
Yeah.
Because you were the mother.
I was, the authoritarian,
Chauffeur. She did everything.
Yeah. Well,
grocery shop. Oh my gosh, they hated going grocery shopping with me because I had a list, I had a budget, and we would not get anything that wasn't on the list.
Yeah.
And Dre would try to like sneak in stuff, and I was like, nope, not on the list, not getting it. And one time my dad went with us and he went to grab something and I was like, it's not on the list. And he was like, we need to have a conversation when we get home. So we get home and we're like putting the stuff away and he's like, Inez, just because it's not on the list doesn't mean you can't splurge every now and then. And I was like, but we've got a budget and I'm trying to stick to it. And I was like trying to and he's like, it's okay. We can get some donuts every now and then. Like, it's fine. So I still think about that every now and then because when I have a list and I try to stick to the list and we go into Costco and Craig's like, oh, we need this and we need that. And I'm like, it's not on the list.
and I'm also a planner. Like, I think ahead. Amanda is very like in the moment now.
Now I am. Yeah, I wasn't that way before.
Why are you now?
I don't know. I think when I went off to Oklahoma State was the first time where it was just like, okay, take care of yourself.
Care of everything else.
You do take care of everything else. And I've gotten used to just looking out for what I need. And so I don't think about budgets and lists. And
that's why it drives you nuts when we go shopping together because I'm thinking about 5 days ahead from now.
Yeah, you are. And I'm thinking about at that very
what
moment.
you need for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is probably going to be our biggest, well, it would cause divorce in most families, the way we fight about not fight. We just can't decide what we want for dinner.
No, and that's because most of the time I really just don't care. Like it doesn't matter to me.
And then I
She's
suggest
lying.
something and then you're like, you do the Ramon. I don't know about that.
Ramon is my dad. For those who don't know, he makes noises the way we all do. Yeah.
But you going off to Oklahoma State, I think, really made an impact on all of us because, like, you living in LA, you were able to come home and take care of us. And you moving to
It's a big
Oklahoma
deal.
was a big deal.
And not only that, so you lived with us, Dre lived with us in Texas,
Yes.
but B actually lived with Amanda in Oklahoma.
For a
Yeah,
little bit.
For a little
Mhm.
bit.
Yeah.
Well, in my second year, not my first year. In my second year, she had graduated from high school and she wanted to go to community college at, I forgot what the school is called. And then it was basically like the feeder school to Oklahoma State. So she tried that for a little bit, and then she ended up coming back home. But yeah, I just, when you've got an idea in your head, like me leaving the state, you're going to do whatever it takes to get it done. And so it was nothing for me to like pack up my car and go. I didn't think about it. It was probably selfish. But I think to everybody else, it probably seemed crazy. Like, holy crap, you don't know anybody. There's tornadoes.
And it was not that you didn't know anybody and like, not you being there wasn't weird. It was you really leaving this time because, again, you living in LA, you were home all the time. And this was real. Like, we had to literally learn how to live without you.
You had to figure it out.
Yeah, we had to figure it out. Pop had to drive us everywhere. Pop had to make dinner. Like,
Yeah.
B had to make dinner. B had to learn how to, take care of me for the first time, like truly.
Yeah.
So it was wild. I think.
Newfound appreciation, huh?
Yeah.
Kidding. Kidding.
It was NOC, Northern Oklahoma College.
Yeah, NOC.
Yeah, out of Stillwater. But yeah, I think you really kind of found and you didn't think you were coming home.
No, when I left, that was it. I was like,
rear view mirror.
Peace out, peeps. I'll see ya
at holidays.
Yeah, some Thanksgiving down the road. Yeah, I didn't think I was coming home, and so I haven't really kept up with it, but I was a huge sports junkie, specifically college football, and I wanted to be a sports journalist. And I mean, for a long time, I was really into sports, Andre. Like, yeah. I had my own sports blog. It was called Deportes My Way.
Spelled not.
Way, yeah. Spelled
W-A-Y.
G-U-E-Y. And I really wanted to make a career out of this. And I wanted to go work at ESPN. So I was like, I'm going to end up in like Connecticut or New York City or some like weird, spot. And
that was your dream job.
That was my dream job. And I didn't care about anything but that. Which
was funny because you're introverted.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you love the details and you knew stats like nobody
else.
Yeah,
and I didn't care about like the broadcasting side. I cared about the writing side. And there were some sports journalists at the time, like Rick Riley, who really had like solid, they were more like lifestyle sports pieces, and they were incredible to me, and just the storytelling behind all of that really like encaptured me, and that's what I wanted to do. And I felt, see, this whole storytelling thing goes way far back. I always liked telling people stories, and I aced all of my journalism classes. But I talking about it, okay. It from like a sports side was
weird flex.
Yeah. It was different. It was cool. And that's what I wanted to dedicate my life to. So yeah. And when I tell you I was like hyper-focused, I was hyper-focused. I didn't care about dating. I didn't think marriage or kids or any of that. None of that was on the horizon for me. It was like, I'm going to go get a job and I'm going to go write these freaking pieces that like blow up on the internet.
And Oklahoma State was a part of that plan, or were you beyond that by the time you got to Oklahoma State?
Not Oklahoma State per se. I think just school in general, and specifically a school with a Division I football program that was at least at the minimum decent. I knew I didn't want to go into the SEC. I'm not a fan of the SEC, so that was like a big hard no. That was before you went off to school. That's just because the Big 12 or the Southwest Conference was kind of your thing. Yeah. And they were teams that I liked. I have never been a fan. Never liked Big Ten either. I've never liked the Big Ten, and I've never liked the SEC. So those schools were a no, with the exception of Ole Miss. I did apply to Ole Miss because I think they had a sports journalism program. I applied to Oregon. I applied to Oklahoma State. I applied to UT, which that goes even back further because I applied to UT right out of high school and I was accepted, but I didn't go because I couldn't afford it. And I think that was kind of like the dream school at the time. You also wanted to go to maybe Notre Dame? Yeah, I looked at Notre Dame as well. Yeah. And I, at that point, was like, okay, wherever I get accepted first, that's where I'm going. Doesn't matter where it's at. I'm just going to go for it. And it happened to be Oklahoma State. So I think in like April, they sent me my acceptance letter. And I remember I came home from like class or something, and my dad had checked the mail, and he was in the shower, and there's this big envelope, and it says Oklahoma State, and he comes out of the shower, and he's like, "What is that envelope?" And I was like, "I got accepted to Oklahoma State." And he's like, "I didn't know you applied." Yeah, I'm like, "Well, guess what? I'm moving there in the fall."
He was not happy.
And he was like, "No, you're not. You're not going to go. You don't even know anybody out there. That's crazy. I can't believe you, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Yes, I'm going." And that was it. That was that. So I remember I like called my mom and I was like, "Guess what? I'm moving to Oklahoma." And she was like, "What?" And she kind of had like the same reservations. And then I think they were both impressed at me kind of taking the initiative and being like, "Listen, guys, I'm going to go with or without your support. So you can either jump on board or not." And she actually ended up taking me to orientation. And that was my first time out there. I had already, told them that I was going to go. I had already enlisted basically.
Enlisted.
Enrolled.
So hard.
I'm in the Army now.
Enrolled, enlisted, whatever. So we went out to Stillwater, and it was everything that I had hoped for it to be. Had I gone there right out of high school, I think it would have worked. There's just something about your environment where Riverside County, it was big. It was a big jump, and it was a big move.
Yeah, and I feel like Stillwater felt more like home.
Yeah, it did. It really felt like home. And it was larger, but it didn't feel overwhelming, and it felt like a homey community. And it was comfortable.
Yeah.
So I went and became a cowgirl.
A poke.
A poke.
I think that is a trait that you have, is that when you make a decision, you're just 100% full on.
Oh yeah. It's hard to shake me from it.
Yeah.
And it takes a while for me to make a decision. Think about, I weigh the pros and the cons and, do all the backup research, but when I'm committed, man, I am committed.
Well, the beautiful thing about Oklahoma State was that's where you found or met a lot of your closest friends,
mm-hmm.
soulmates.
Mm-hmm. My soulmates. And I remember my aunt told me, because I always I had friends growing up, but when you grow up in a small town, you go to school with the same people from kindergarten to high school, and these people, and their families.
Their gossip.
You know
their garbage.
Everything about them. And some people you really, 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 really become good friends with, and other people you're just friends with them because you know them. You've known them for so long.
You have no other option in a small town like that.
Exactly. And there were some people who I would consider were my best friends, but as our interest changed, our relationship changed. And my aunt told me, "You're gonna find your life best friends. You're gonna find them in college." And so I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh,
cheesy."
Deolinda said I'm going to find my friends in college." And then I get to college and I'm like, I don't want friends. They're distractions.
She didn't have friends for a solid year, I think.
Probably the first 4 to 5 months. And there were people in my class who were they knew I was from California. They were transplants as well. And transplants, same thing.
They were from California as well.
Yes. And they really pushed at me "Hey, do you want to go do this or you want to go do that?" And for the longest time I was like, no. And then I finally gave in to one, which was Katie Vaz. Shout out to Katie Vaz. And then the other ones and she was friends with everybody else, and everyone else kind of started pushing at me. And
she's
then,
very outgoing.
She is. And then eventually I had this super core group of friends, and I still have that same core group of friends to this day. And these are people. It's funny how it works out because we were all transfers at the same time. So we all transferred in, started at the same time, went through the program at the same time. And we were all kind of the outcasts of our program too. We didn't fit the traditional AdCom mold, I guess. We were definitely black sheep. I think other people looked at us like that, and we all kind of stuck together. And yeah, we were fun. We were quirky.
So your major was what?
Ag communications. Yeah, so I went to orientation. I was a journalism major, and I'm very intuitive, and I always follow my intuition. And at orientation, it just the program didn't feel great to me, so I was looking around at all of the other people from the different colleges, and I went over to the ag school and I asked the lady, "Do you guys offer, or do you have ag communications as a major? And she said, yep. And I was like, okay, I want to change my major to AgCom. Because I knew the premise of AgCom, and it didn't matter whether I wanted to stick into sports journalism or not. I could still go the AgCom route because it's a lot of the same classes and the same fundamentals. But I just felt that I needed a little bit more of like a homey school. And I think that the ag department did that, or the ag school did that for me.
Well, that's I think that was the biggest challenge for you, was to not come up with, but just have friends that you really trusted. And you found them there.
I found them.
You guys went through a lot together, and still to this day.
Yeah, they are my ride or dies, definitely lifelong friends. And it's been cool to have like started these friendships with them in college. So we went through like finals and all of the stresses, what we thought were like huge stresses, right? And it wasn't. It was like publishing the Cowboy Journal and getting our articles done, and tornadoes that, hit the Stillwater area and stupid stuff like that. And then we graduated, and then, people start to get married and people start to have kids, and we're around for like 30th birthdays and like monumental milestones in our lives. So it has been cool to grow up with these people and really see them like, start their lives and their careers and stuff.
And also see them become successful.
Oh yeah, definitely. And each one of them has, taken a non-traditional route like us, where they are business owners. Not a lot of them want to, or are in like corporate style jobs. So it's been really cool to watch them build something from nothing. And as we do that, we can relate to each other and ask each other questions, and point each other in the right direction, and just offer that support. That is probably the most invaluable thing. And when you have friends who are in the thick of it with you, who really relate to what you're going through, that is such an incredible feeling. It's, from what I found as a small business owner, it takes a lot of investment from you, and people do not always understand. Your family's not always going to understand. Your friends sometimes aren't going to understand. They don't get that. On weekends, you probably have to work. And especially when you're getting started, like, it's not a 9 to 5, when you clock out, there is no clocking out at the end of the day and like shutting off and not thinking about it. You're thinking about it all the time. Even if you happen to go out like golfing during the middle of the day, you're thinking about your call, you're thinking about a presentation or where you're at in a project. And in those first few years, you're on 24/7, and people don't get it unless they are also doing that. And they're right there with you when you have a hard month, or when you're like, I don't know if I can continue. They're the ones who are building you up, and they're like, you can do this. This is what we did. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Or, hey, you just knocked out something that's pretty awesome. Like, let's celebrate that. They really see the world differently the way that we do. And that has been the biggest blessing in my life.
Yeah, I think 2 words that you said was investment, and just, going through the trenches with those people, because you are all doing different things, but you all have the same problems. They're just in different ways.
Fundamentally, it's the same.
Yeah. And so, maybe you're going through that one day, but maybe this other person is doing that. But it's unrelatable to people who are closer to us, who aren't going, like, they're not going through that, just like you're talking about. So, when we talk about it with your dad, it goes over his head. When we talk about it to some of my friends or some of your friends that are local, they don't understand what we do, and 2, the commitment and the passion and the sacrifice that we put into it.
Yeah.
They see us traveling, or they see us playing golf or whatever, whatever we do for fun, but they don't see us at 10, 11 o'clock on a Sunday night like we were last night, working, trying to make a grind, trying to make a deadline.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's something that unless you've been through it, or you're going through it, you just don't understand. And I recommend anybody to try what they really want to do. Whether that's running their own business or jumping from their current job to a different or a better job.
Take the jump, man. Life is too short to sit around unhappy.
Well, and people may be listening to this, and they may be Dre's age or younger than Dre, and they're like, oh, these people are 30 years old. Well, there may be people that are 40 years old listening to this that, you know, they still have life left to give, and, you know, take advantage of it. Time is precious.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, if you're willing to work really hard, and if you're passionate about something, make the leap and do it. You are going to reap the benefits of that tenfold. Yep. Seriously, it's the hardest choice I've ever made, and it's the best choice I've ever made. And
intuition.
It's all intuition, and the beauty of where we're at today with modern technology is that we have the internet at our fingertips, and you can literally do anything online, anything. It's opened up so many doors. So you can create business that doesn't have to be local anymore. You know, it's worldwide.
Doesn't even have to be physical. It doesn't even have to be like material things.
You can do anything. And I don't necessarily think that you have to go to college anymore nowadays. Like, there's so many options, and you can build your own path. Yep. That's the beauty about where we're at in today's world, is you can create it yourself.
I still think you need to educate yourself, but that doesn't have to mean a formal education.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, there's so many things that you can learn for free mm-hmm. on YouTube, on, you know, just Google searching, doing the basic, you know, I don't know how many people go to school and then they do something that they don't even
they didn't study.
Yeah. You know, and that was us. That was me, at least. But you did a lot of things that you're not using in our business, you know? So
yeah. And I mean, I learned like the basics of design and stuff like that. I learned how to operate, you know, Adobe Creative Suite and stuff like that. But I didn't learn anything about running a business. I didn't learn how to be a freelancer. I didn't learn any of that stuff.
That's something they don't teach you.
They don't. They don't tell you about those things. They don't teach you about mortgages and, you know, student loans and stuff like that. And so, I mean, and that's life, right? You figure it out as you go. But I guess a lot of people probably don't go after their dreams because they're intimidated by other people, or they're intimidated by where they should be in life. And the truth is, everyone's on their own path, and everyone's just trying to figure it out. Nobody really has it figured out.
How about they're intimidated by what they see on Instagram or TikTok or something like that?
It's all fake. All of it is fake.
Yeah.
It's a highlight reel, guys. And we're guilty of that too. We only post the good things. And I really try to post the bad stuff too, because I feel like the people who follow us, I don't want them to think that it's all glamorous and like unicorns and rainbows over here. It's not that at all. I mean, some days it is. But other days it's dog poop. So you shouldn't base your life or compare where you're at to other people's career or other people's paths, not necessarily career paths, but, you know, you might be at the very beginning stages of your path and people are at the end, and that's why it looks glamorous for them. So the comparison game it isn't healthy. And as long as you stay in your own lane and really work towards what you want to accomplish, that's all that matters.
Yeah. I think it's funny about the YouTube ads, or just ads in general, that if you do this one thing, you're going to be a millionaire by, you know, the end of the year or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, if that one thing was on this video and you told us what that was, there'd be a lot more millionaires, you know?
Exactly. If it was that easy, everybody would be doing it.
It's not about doing one thing for one day. It's the daily grind, getting up, working, going to bed, getting up, working. And it doesn't have to be all work, but you have to have a process that continues to work towards a goal. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest thing that, you know, we've figured out, is that we do not capture every bit of opportunities that are out there, because it's just impossible. But if we can capture a percentage of them, or just continue to work towards a goal, you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And also, when you're in your lane and you're, you know, working towards your goals, don't be so bogged down that you can't see an opportunity when it arises. You need to be not necessarily like always looking for them, but be conscious enough to notice them when they appear, and to be able to think them through. Like, is this really for me right now? No, it probably isn't. And don't be afraid to pass those by because other things are going to come up. So don't feel that you have to take every opportunity that comes. I mean, at the beginning, you almost feel like you have to, but when you have the courage to say no, bigger things will come to you.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And that's something we're trying to pass on to Dre as well, because she is starting out. She is starting her own business, and she's with us today because, you know, she's a part of our company as well. But, you know, she is doing her own freelance work and her own, she has her own clients now. And so,
as of today, how exciting.
Yeah.
It is exciting, but there's a lot to learn.
Yes.
There's so much to learn.
So much to learn.
And it's okay. And you're going to be overwhelmed some days, and it happens. But the beautiful thing about it is that you are going to figure it out, and you have us to help you. It's not, you know, it's not like you have us like we have our friends. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to find people that are very similar in mind and the way they think about things. It helps you grow, and you always find people that are not saying that we're smarter than you, but have more experience.
Yeah.
In the things that you want to accomplish, and that's going to help you become more successful. My parents, my dad especially, always told me, surround yourself with the people that you want to be more like. If you're with a bunch of people that are causing trouble, you're probably going to be trouble. But if you're somebody who is around a bunch of successful or people that are just really good at what they do, you're going to be more like them, and you're going to strive to be more like them, because it's naturally to be natural human, just to be competitive, you know, and you want to be better. You want to be like them. So that would be my takeaway from today. But yeah, it's important to understand what people are like on the inside, because it reflects the decisions that they make.
Mm-hmm.
And you are very unique, Amanda, and it's challenging sometimes for me to understand how you think, but it makes sense now that, you know, I have the Enneagram to look back, and I mean, obviously we've been together for over a decade now, which is crazy.
Weird.
Crazy.
Went by fast.
Weird, yeah.
But yeah, so anything else that you have on your list to talk about?
No, because I don't have a list.
Talking about the now, this is a prime example of her
Talking about the now. No.
where I wanted a list so we could plan for the future, but she doesn't do that.
I wasn't interviewing myself.
Awkward silence.
What?
Is there anything else you remember of Amanda while you were growing up?
No, not really. I remember you just being there and then being gone. It was weird.
Wow. So,
well, because you were there and then you just disappeared. So, and then I had to learn how to live life by myself and wash my own clothes and
I was gonna say that
cook
one
my
day,
own food.
one day your clothes were clean, the next day they weren't.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
Yeah,
And
because B wasn't around for long, like
Either,
at all.
yeah.
She was home for like 2 years maybe, and then Pop and her got into a fight, and he kicked her out. So
That probably wasn't for the podcast.
Okay.
it's okay, B. It's okay.
So,
Okay.
well, anyways, thank you guys for listening.
Hope you learned something.
Yeah. And there's more to learn about Amanda, definitely.
Yeah.
She's an onion for sure.
Yeah, you have multiple layers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for listening, and we will be back on the next one, which we're not going to release our guest yet.
Not yet.
No, but I'm excited for our first one.
Yes, I am too.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
Hey guys, Craig here. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this podcast. It means so much to us. You can find this podcast with video on YouTube at outlaw.legacy. You can also listen to this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just search Outlaw Legacy. This is the Crossfire Podcast, brought to you by Outlaw Legacy.